Okay, so this lecture is going to be an introduction to Aqeeda. For some people who are studying the scholarship course already and have taken the Aqeeda module, it's going to be more of a recap of what you've studied before. But for those who haven't, it's going to be a good introduction to get everybody on the same level, give everybody the same basis of the different issues in Aqeeda, what the different criteria will mean and all them issues. So we're going to go through it, Inshallah, and give you more of an overall understanding of it. Then later on, when we do the rest of the lectures, when we're mentioning these words like mutawatir, or we're mentioning issues like ijma, all the different issues, people will have an equal basis to understand what it means. So we're going to start off. So it's going to start off really basic, but Inshallah it'll get a little bit more advanced later on. So the first thing is, in Aqeeda, before we go into Aqeeda, in fiqh there's a few different madhabs in fiqh. So if people can just put their hands up and tell me what are the different madhabs in fiqh. Brilliant. So they're the four madhabs in fiqh. And what does fiqh mean? Fiqh means practicing. So practicing means the method of praying your salah, the method of the rules for Sawm, the rules for zakah, and so on and so forth. So that's what fiqh means. And then the rules for transactions and so on and so forth. So that is the four different madhabs in fiqh. But in Aqeeda also, we have different madhabs as well. Now, can someone mention to me the different madhabs in Aqeeda which we've heard of or we know of? Okay, so you got the Maturidi, the Ash'ari, the Hanabala, the Athari, Mu'tazilites. Okay, brilliant. So we're going to go through some of these madhabs in Aqeeda. So the first madhab in Aqeeda, first of all, what we have is people refer to the Hanafi Aqeeda and the Maturidi Aqeeda. Both of these Aqeedas are the same. Now, in terms of the Maturidi Aqeeda, or Shaykh Abu Mansur Maturidi, he's the person who, what happened was there was many different narrations from Imam Abu Hanifa. So he set up his Aqeeda in the time of the Sahaba. And what happened later on was there was someone called Shaykh Abu Mansur Maturidi. So what he did was he took the different narrations of Imam Abu Hanifa and he tested them. So he looked at the narrations and then he tested them and then put them as part of the Maturidi creed. And so he looked at the ones which were the strong narrations and he looked at the weak narration. He took the stronger narrations. And only on a couple of issues did Shaykh Abu Mansur Maturidi disagree with Imam Abu Hanifa. So when I say disagree, what I mean is he took, for example, the weaker opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa. So it was only on a couple of issues. And we're not going to go into it now, but obviously those who studied Aqeeda don't know about it. But generally, when you say Maturidi Aqeeda or you say Hanafi Aqeeda, they're both synonymous. They both mean the same thing because the differentiation is just on one or two issues. Okay, so Maturidi Aqeeda was set up by someone called Shaykh Abu Mansur Maturidi, and he came in the year 333. So he passed away in the year 333. He came in the year 240 something roughly, but he passed away in the year 333 or 335. So that's what happened. So Shaykh Abu Mansur, he looked at all the different narrations of Imam Hanifa, because Imam Abu Hanifa, what he did was he set up his madhab in the time of Sahaba. Alright, and in the time of Tabi'een, so that's the time he set up his madhab. So what we say is, if you look at the Hanafi Aqeeda, and there's going to be many more proofs. So for example, in the second lecture, what we're going to talk about, we're going to look at just one specific issue, proving why the Maturidi Aqeeda and the Ash'ari Aqeeda is the most correct Aqeeda. But now we're just talking about generally. So generally speaking, if you look at the Hanafi Aqeeda, what do you think gives it a strong basis of proof or evidence to say that, look, you know, to follow Hanafi Aqeeda, it makes sense or it's correct? What do we think? What do we think? So what could be a strong basis for someone to start following the Hanafi fiqh? Hanafi Aqeeda.
Close to the time of the Prophet.
Okay, brilliant. So it's closer to the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anything else?
Wide number of followers.
Sorry?
Number of people following.
So they've got quite a wide number of followers. Okay. Okay, brilliant. So that's what we say, that if you look at Imam Abu Hanifa, he first of all came closest to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second thing is, when he was setting up his Aqeeda, it was at the time of the Salaf. So it was the time of the greatest Tabi'een and the greatest junior Sahaba. So if there were many major issues in his Aqeeda, people would have let Imam Abu Hanifa know straight away. So that shows that there's a really good strong basis for his Aqeedah. Right, and then later, like we said, Shaykh Abu Masud came and then he tested and he looked at the different narrations. He looked at some narrations were fabricated, some narrations were weak, and some narrations were strong. So he looked at all the different narrations and then he put them together and he said, look, this is the strong narrations of Imam Abu Hanifa, and that became the Maturidi Aqeedah. So that was set up by someone called Shaykh Abu Mansur Maturidi. The next one, as was mentioned before, was the Ash'ari Aqeedah, and that was set up by someone called Shaykh Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari. Now, Shaykh Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, first of all, he used to be Mu'tazilite initially. Then, during the end of his life, he became Hanabala, and then at the end, he set up his Aqeedah called the Ash'ari Aqeedah, and that was on the last 4 or 5 years of his life. So Ash'ari Aqeedah was set up during that period, and then later on it was developed by many different scholars, but that's when it was set up initially. Now, again, Ash'ari, so someone did mention it earlier, but what is the basis for us to look at and see that why Ash'ari Aqeedah is, what is the proof that Ash'ari Aqeedah is the correct Aqeedah, or what can we think that makes us think that Ash'ari Aqeedah has some basis behind it?
A lot of great scholars like Imam Ghazali, etc., followed the Ash'ari school.
Okay, brilliant. So they had many of the great scholars throughout history. So, for example, Imam Ghazali, Imam Nawawi, Ibn Hajar Asqalani. So many great scholars followed it. Okay, brilliant. Anything else? Okay, and another thing was, there was the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and he said that a time will come when my ummah is misguided. So then the Sahaba asked Rasulullah, what should we do at that time? So Rasulullah ﷺ said, follow the majority. And the majority of the scholars have always been Ash'ari. Okay, so that shows us the basis. But that's not the only proof, because like for example today, one of the topics is about Sham and Yemen. So we're going to demonstrate that by just hadiths about Sham and Yemen shows that the Maturidi and Aqeedah and the Ash'ari Aqeedah is the strongest Aqeedahs. Right, so that's what happened with Ash'ari Aqeedah. Now, so you know how Maturidi Aqeedah was set up through the different narrations of Imam Abu Hanifa? With Ash'ari Aqeedah, how that was set up was it took different narrations from different Salaf scholars, as well as it took narrations from Imam Abu Hanifa as well, and it was set up by that. So for example, narrations from different Sahaba, narrations from Imam Abu Hanifa, narrations from Imam Shafi. So you've taken all that narration together, that's how Ash'ari Aqeedah was set up. Right, after that then we have, as mentioned, the Athari Aqeedah. Now the Athari Aqeedah is broken up into two parts. You've got two different groups following. First of all, Athari Aqeedah is attributed to Imam Ahmad. And now we've got that, what happens is that's broken up into two parts. You've got the Hanbalis who follow it, which is the Hanbali Aqeedah, and then you've got the current day Salafi Aqeedah, which both branch off from Athari Aqeedah. Now Hanbali Aqeedah, that's followed by people like Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi, different scholars, Ibn Qayyim, them type of scholars. And then you've got the Salafi Aqeedah, which was followed by people like Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawzi, and them type of scholars. Now, what you've got is both groups, what they do is they attribute both of their Aqeedahs to Imam Ahmad. So you've got the people like Ibn Qudama al-Maqdisi who say, no, Imam Ahmad followed the Hanbali Aqeedah, and then they'll show and demonstrate different narrations of Imam Ahmad showing that Imam Ahmad was actually Hanbali in Aqeedah. So for example, he was into the Sawaf, he was into all the different Hanbali views, in terms of, for example, Hanbalis, they believe in Mutashabih, that kind of issues. We're going to talk about them a little bit later. Whereas then you've got the Salafi Aqeedah, which again attributes their Aqeedah to Imam Ahmad, and so then they've got the current Aqeedah, for example, showing that, demonstrating their current views, for example, what their current views are, so for example, God being in space and them kind of issues. So you've got two different Aqeedahs, and both of them say that Imam Ahmad is basically their Aqeedah comes from Imam Ahmad. So just looking at it from a critical point of view, when you've got two completely contradictory Aqeedahs and both of them are saying Imam Ahmad was our follower, and at the moment one hasn't been able to destroy the other. So you've got Hanbalis who have a strong basis through the classical books, and you've got the Salafis who got the basis through the books as well. through the scholars such as Ibn Taymiyyah, and you've got two direct conflicting views, it makes it difficult to put your basis on one of the views. So that's the Salafi and Athari Aqeeda. Okay, so what we've done is we put notes on there as well, so for some of the bits, the notes are already in there, and for some of the bits, you just need to put them in. Right, so moving on, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So it tells, it's been written, but basically, what is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah? So Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is, first of all, it's anybody who follows the Maturidi or Ash'ari Aqeeda, right? And then from the lectures later on, we're going to prove why the Maturidi and Ash'aris are Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, right? And then in your notes, it does give some proofs about what does Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah mean, so I don't need to go through that. Right, now, in terms of everything in the religion, it's broken up into two main branches. You've got the Usul al-Din and you've got the Furu al-Din, right? So the Usul al-Din, that refers to anything which has got to do with Aqeedah, right? Now, when it means anything got to do with Aqeedah, so when we say Usul al-Din, any denial of anything in the Usul al-Din can lead to two things. It can either lead to a person leaving the fold of Islam, or it can lead to a person leaving Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. And we're going to go a bit more into that in a bit. The second bit is Furu al-Din. And Furu al-Din is everything got to do with fiqh, practicing. So any person who doesn't practice, for example, does not pray his salah, that goes into the aspect of Furu al-Din. So that one will never lead a person out of the fold of Islam. What it will do is make a person sinful. Now, if you were to deny a Furu, then that takes you back into the basis of Usul al-Din. So for example, I say there's no such thing as prayer. So now that's Usul al-Din, because that is mentioned in the Quran, which is an issue in Aqeedah. Therefore, that will lead me out of the fold of Islam. But if I say, if a person does not pray, now that goes into the topic area of Furu al-Din. That means the person is going to be sinful. Okay? Now, moving on, Usul al-Din is broken up into two parts. The first part is the Usul of Aqeedah, and the second part is the Furu of Aqeedah. Now, Usul of Aqeedah, the Ash'aris and Maturidis have two different views about what falls into that category. So we're going to go through both of them. First of all, us Maturidis, and Shaykh has mentioned it before as well, we say anything mentioned in Quran or Mutawatir Hadith, to deny it means that a person has denied something which is in the Usul al-Din. So Usul al-Din is anything which is in Quran or Mutawatir Hadith, right? And the Ash'aris, what they say, Usul al-Din is anything in Quran or Mutawatir Hadith, but also it's mashhur. What that means is it's well known. So well known amongst all of us. So for example, the four books. So for example, we all know about the Quran, and we all know about the Bible, which is the Injil, but maybe some people don't know about the Zabur, possibly the Psalms. So it's not as well known. So because it's not as well known, according to the Ash'aris, to deny it would not lead to a person leaving the fold of Islam. It would not mean the person is breaking the Usul of Aqeedah. Whereas according to us, because we say mashhur doesn't matter, for us it has to be Quran and a Mutawatir Hadith, therefore to deny it would mean a person leaving the fold of Islam. So does everybody understand the difference? So for us it's anything in Quran or Mutawatir Hadith falls into the Usul of Aqeedah. And for the Ash'aris, it's anything in Quran or anything in a Mutawatir Hadith and is mashhur or well known. Yeah.
The mashhur is not talking about the hadith terminology mashhur.
That's right.
But just general. Just
general. So it means in the sense of it's well known amongst everybody. So now, for example, maybe about 50 years ago, everybody knew about the 4 books. But now maybe only people know about 3 of them or 2 of them. And later on, maybe in 100 years time, maybe only people don't know about 2 of them or 1 of them. So according to Ash'aris, to deny them 2 which is well known would be deny them something which is well known.
So it can change over time.
It can change over time, yeah, because it's about what's known amongst the people. So what was mashhur during the time of the Sahaba or 50 years after that will be totally different to what's mashhur now. Okay. Now there's a second part to it as well. In terms of the Quran, everyone agrees, the Maturidis and the Ash'aris, that the denial of it leads a person out the fold of Islam, because the Quran innately in itself is mutawatir. But what about the hadith and its mutawatir hadith? So this is my question now. So there's no right or wrong answer. So just think about it logically and think about what answer your mind comes to. So don't worry about it. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no extra points or anything like that, because we're not getting as much discussion. It's normally in lessons, it's a lot more heated than this. Right, so what do we think? For example, let's say there's a hadith and someone says, oh, this hadith, if I come to you and I say, oh, guess what, there's a hadith, it's mutawatir to you. Would that be, if this brother now denied it, would that mean the person's left the fold of Islam? If yes, why? If no, why? What do we think? Just based on logic, not forget about the books, forget about anything. Just think of, for example, before I answer that question, sorry, what is mutawatir? So I should answer that, shouldn't I? So mutawatir is that when it came from the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, there was many different people narrating it. So ahad means there was only one person narrating it. So it went from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ to one person, and then after that it might have went to many different people. But the initial chain was only one person. But mutawatir means there was so many people that it's impossible to deny it. It has to be true. So for example, if somebody came to me and said, oh, there's a car outside, people came to me and said, guess what, someone's been ran outside, now I might believe it, isn't it? And when it gets to 20 or 30 people, now it'll be ludicrous for me to deny it. So mutawatir means there's not a specific number to it, because there's different opinions about what mutawatir is, but the best way to understand what mutawatir is that the denial of it is impossible. You now got to the level of certainty. So many people have told you about it, that's impossible. But in mutawatir, in terms of hadith terminology, so many people have narrated it from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and then it's gone on later, that's mutawatir. But for example, this chain is that one Rasulullah ﷺ narrated it to one person, and then later on it went to many different people. Now it's gone to thousands of people. That's not mutawatir, because initially at the beginning there was only one person in the chain. So that can never ever be mutawatir. So mutawatir is right at the beginning there was so many people that the denial of it was impossible. So now moving back to my question which I asked before, if I went to the brother and said, this hadith is mutawatir, if he denies it, has he left the fold of Islam?
No.
Why not?
Because you just said it, you didn't prove to him that it is mutawatir.
But in this example, it's 20 people who narrated it from the Prophet, and then it's gone all the way down, and I'm just one little guy in the bottom of that chain narrating it to another person.
Does he know it's mutawatir?
So I've told him it's mutawatir.
So he believes it's mutawatir, but he's saying that he doesn't believe the hadith exists, or?
Yeah, so he denies it. He says no, there's no such thing. What do we think?
If he understands the concept of mutawatir,
Yeah, he does.
then it's a problem, because then he could also deny Quran using the same method, isn't it?
Right. Okay. So then you're saying for him to deny it is kufr.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous.
It's not nice now.
Yeah.
It's not mutawatir for him, is it?
Right.
So I only heard it from one person.
Right.
The report itself is mutawatir, but it's not mutawatir for him.
So then for him to deny it he's allowed to deny it.
Yeah, it's not mutawatir for him.
Right. So you're saying actually for each person, like more than 10 people need to tell that person every single time.
Whatever, from 10 different reports or whatever.
Okay.
Is he denying that it's mutawatir, or is he denying the knowledge in it?
He's denying the knowledge in it.
But if the knowledge is appeased, then it can be a problem. What type of depends on what knowledge it holds. Is it with the ruling matters, or is it with opinion matters?
No, but then, I don't know, for example, if it's a furu Aqeeda is practicing salah, but then denying salah becomes Aqeeda matter, doesn't it? So when you deny it, if I deny mutawatir, it automatically becomes Aqeeda matter, doesn't it? So In this one, he's denied mutawatir, so it's automatically an Aqeedah matter. So that's kufr. But only one person's told him.
Telling him is not changing the definition of the hadith mutawatir.
Okay, so that's a really good point. So he's saying the hadith is mutawatir. So the fact that he only knows about one person doesn't now make the hadith ahad.
Still ahad to him, isn't it?
It's mutawatir to him still.
No, it's
Oh, sorry, it's still ahad to him.
The hadith is mutawatir,
Right,
but it's ahad to him.
right. Yeah.
If going off that, then every single Muslim would need multiple sources for which they would take evidences. It would be responsibility of each individual to establish a ruling based on that, in Aqeedah matters or fiqh matters, based on the understanding of the brother there.
Okay, what do you mean?
So for example, if it's an Aqeedah matter and someone says this is a mutawatir hadith,
Right.
clearly that's been established in the past that something is mutawatir. So if you, that's on the example of belief in Allah, that Allah is one, and then this issue comes about reading 5 times salah, and someone says, well, this is mutawatir as well. And he says, well, actually, no, I've only heard that from you. So then he would need all the evidences presented to him personally before he believes that. But that's been established in the mutawatir.
But
Right.
I think it depends who's telling him, whether he believes you or not. I mean, you might just be Joe in the street.
Yeah.
If someone comes to me and said, this is mutawatir, I go, who are you, mate?
Exactly. So.
If Shaykh Atabek came to me, this is mutawatir, I'd accept it.
Right. So you're saying it depends on the person,
Yeah.
which is fine. But then, even for example, one person saying it and he's really reliable, does that take you to the level of certainty? Because remember, because now we're talking about something so important. We're talking about someone's iman, someone's belief. So therefore, if we're saying that person goes out the fold of Islam, we've got to be certain about it. Because that's what certainty is, isn't it? So remember we said, Shaykh mentioned it before as well, any issue in terms of the usul of Aqeedah, one needs to be certain. Right? So now we're going to say a person goes out the fold of Islam. So as you mentioned, if only one person's coming to you, even if it's Shaykh Atabek, or even if it's some normal person in the street, will that take you to the level of certainty? That now denial of it will mean that you leave the fold of Islam?
No.
Why not?
Because now you're putting it, you're putting the emphasis on the reliability of a person. So if you could show me, like the mutawatir somehow, like you were amazing and you showed me over chains, and I still denied it. So it depends on how I understood what you told me.
Yeah. So by me showing you many different proofs, now I've shown you the mutawatir level of proofs, isn't it? So you're actually agreeing with him, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because now it's mutawatir to you, because now you've got Shaykh Atabek showing you, and then you've got this chain of narration, which could be, for example, Ibn Hajar's chain, and then you could have another chain of narration, which is maybe Imam Nawawi's chain. Now I've given you many different proofs. That has taken you to the level of mutawatir, which is giving you certainty. Now you believe it, isn't it? So you actually agree with his point.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So brilliant. Okay, so that's it. So that's what we say. So what we say is, when it comes to the specifics of Aqeedah, when we say, in terms of Quran, Quran is innately mutawatir. But when you're talking about mutawatir hadith, and we're talking about, because the hadith never changes, when something's mutawatir, it's always mutawatir. But for you to end up breaking an issue in the usul of Aqeedah, it needs to be mutawatir to you. So what that means is, you need to have heard it from quite a few different sources. So it doesn't have to be people, but sources. So for example, as the example there, it could be one person showed you, but then he's demonstrated quite a few different sources to prove that that's mutawatir. Now, if you deny it, that will take you out of the fold of Islam. But if only one person shows you, that will not take you out of the fold of Islam. It's not because terminology changes, but it's because what's happened is requisites have been put in there to ensure that people's iman is kept intact. So for us to lose iman, it needs to be something difficult. So now, it means, let's say for example, a brother comes to me now and says, this hadith is mutawatir, I've got certainty, I need to check it up in a few different sources. Now I've got certainty. Now if I deny it, because I've got mutawatir level of proof, that will leave the person out of the fold of Islam. So usul of the Aqeedah, you need it to be mutawatir, and it needs to be mutawatir to you. Yeah.
Can you get that certainty because you trust the Shaykh that's told you? Because otherwise, I mean, I've never come across a mutawatir hadith otherwise in that case. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah.
I've been told a lot of mutawatir hadith, different ones, but then I've never checked the sources, but I trust the shuyukh that I'm studying from.
Right.
So I have certainty myself that they're telling me what's correct.
I wouldn't say certainty, I'd say strongest thought, because certainty means that there's not even a minute chance that it could be wrong. Not even a 0.0001% chance, because as soon as that goes down from 100%, that is not certainty. And I mean, that's almost the level of, for you to deny it, you would put more than your life on it. Because certainty is like, there's not even a minute chance it can be wrong. And for that to occur, you need to have heard it from many different sources. For example, Shaykh Atabek telling me, that wouldn't be mutawatir to me, because then Shaykh Atabek will show me, then he'll show me the proofs, now it's mutawatir to me. So even though you heard it from one issue of mutawatir, that won't be mutawatir to you. But for example, if you heard it from 3 or 4 different shuyukh, and they've all said it's mutawatir, now that's 100%, it'll be mutawatir to you.
Does that mean that awam have to ensure that they've seen the proofs for each particular aqeedah point?
Not the proofs, but to deny it, you need to have heard it mutawatir to you. So for example, it might be, for example, you came here, and Shaykh Atabek gave you a hadith which is mutawatir. Then later on you went to another lecture and the person said it was mutawatir, and then maybe you read it in a hadith, and it was narrated in there, and the chain was mutawatir. Now you've got certainty. So now for you to deny it would be impossible. So now if you deny it, would lead you to the fall of Islam.
So the issue is only on denial, not on acceptance?
Yeah, the denial of it.
So it's a safeguard basically.
Yeah, yeah, because to deny ahad, we're going to come on to it next, leaves you out of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but not out of Islam. So if you were to deny something which is ahad to you, so now if Shaykh, for example, I narrated a hadith to you, and it was ahad, and you were to deny it, that would make you leave Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, but not Islam. So we're going to come on to that next, but that's the furu of Aqeedah. So just think, because you have to think that someone's iman, someone's basis of religion is just so important that there has to be some solid basis for them to deny it. And also as well, even to take things into Aqeedah, us Maturidis are very strict. We won't take anything in unless it's mentioned in Quran and is mentioned in Mutawatir. So therefore, our rules are so stringent on many different issues. So that basis is so strong that, for example, to deny it leaves a person out of the fold of Islam means it has to be rigorous for them to deny it. And so that means now, one person, for example, you saying it to me, that won't be mutawatir to me. So for example, me to deny what you say, it's quite possible, isn't it? It could be you're wrong, it could be you don't even understand what mutawatir is, it could be many different issues, it could be you misinterpreted it, it could be many different issues, so it's never taken to the level of certainty. So now if there's more than one person saying it to you, now it takes you to the level of certainty. Because remember, certainty is important, because leaving the fold of Islam is huge, isn't it?
Is it a condition that the mutawatir is based upon them, let's say for example, in 3-4 sources that you got it from? For example, you go to one town, and in that one town, you got 4 different people telling the same mutawatir. Isn't mutawatir based on the fact that them 4 people would be impossible to collude together to lie? Based on that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what mutawatir is, isn't it? Mutawatir innately in itself, that's what it is. But for it to be mutawatir to you, yeah, it would be impossible for them to collude, but that generally would be the case now, isn't it? For example, if you heard it from a few different sources, that is now got to the level where it's certain, so you can't deny it.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about some of our brothers who print books nowadays, and they've changed the things in there, and they put in there like...
Okay, so that's another proof why it has to be mutawatir to you, because you might have read that one book, and you're like, oh, this is the book, and it's Ibn Hajar. Now, come on, you're not going to deny Ibn Hajar's Fathul Bari, are you? It's impossible, right? You're not going to deny it. But then it might be there's a misprint, it might be someone's translated it wrong, it might be the Arabic's been written wrong, so there are many different issues, so that's why it has to be mutawatir too. Okay, so that, yeah.
It's like that example with China again, isn't it? If there was some really ignorant person who never heard of China, and then one person came and told them China exists, they could deny it. But once they looked into it and looked into all the books and heard it from so many people, then it becomes mutawatir to them. Is it like that?
Exactly, yeah, that's good. Okay, brilliant. So that's the usul of Aqeedah. The next point is the faru of Aqeedah. That's what we talked a little bit about now. And that is the branches of Aqeedah. So now, denial of anything which is in the branch of Aqeedah leads a person out of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So the branches is, for example, anything mentioned in Ahad Hadith, or in certain issues, denial of ijma. But I'm going to talk a little bit about ijma in a second, because somebody asked a question and we're going to answer that question ourselves in a second. Right, so anyway, Furu of Aqeedah is the branch of Aqeedah. So denial of anything in the branch leads a person out of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Okay, so anything in the Ahad Hadith mentioned, if you deny it and it's not contradicted mutawatir hadith, then denial of it leads a person out of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Okay. Right, now what I'm going to do is,
you know when someone leaves Islam, yeah, it's kufr.
Yeah.
What's the name of someone that leaves? Is it mubtadi? Someone that leaves Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. What's what they call it?
yeah, what you just mentioned. Yeah. Right. So now, so it's basically bid'ah in Aqeedah to leave, to have a problematic issue in the branches of the religion. Yeah.
When you say someone who denies Ahad Hadith, is it in some matter of belief, or like, let's say there's someone who reads Bukhari and he finds let's just say there's a story and he says, I find this unbelievable, how could such and such happen? It's Ahad. So is that the same ruling? But it's not something you have to believe in. Let's just say like, I don't know, a tree was talking.
Yeah.
And he goes, I can't believe in that. Is that same problem then?
No, because so that's the issue. So for example, as long as there's a ahad narration in it, and it's not going against something which is a stronger evidence. So for example, something which is mutawatir or mashhur, or basically anything which is more stronger evidenced, then to deny is actually leads a person out of Al-Sunnah. Right, okay, so now we had the question yesterday about ijma. So somebody said, there was the lesson, and what the point was, say Bukhari.
It was the biography of the Imam.
That's it, the biography of Imam Muslim, and it was that the majority say that Bukhari is stronger, but then there's a few who say Muslim stronger. Then the question was, is it ijma? Right? So now I'm going to explain to you what ijma is, because you need to understand that. And then based on what I've told you, we're going to try and put it into one of the categories and see if it does fall into one of the categories, is it ijma or not? Right, so first of all, ijma, there's two types of ijma. There's ijma in Aqeedah. So when we say ijma in Aqeedah, we mean the asul of deen, or the asul of Aqeedah, right? The asul of Aqeedah. And when we say ijma in fiqh, we mean ijma in the faru of Aqeedah, right? Because ijma in itself is an Aqeedah issue. First of all, ijma. Ijma means consensus, so agreement amongst the scholars. But ijma doesn't mean the 100% agreement of everybody, because if that was the case, it wouldn't be ijma. So for example, when you've got the issue of mutta marriage, so you've got all the scholars on one side who say it's not allowed, and then you've got Ibn Abbas and a couple of scholars who say it is allowed. So ijma is it's not allowed. So even though we've got one or two great scholars saying it's allowed, ijma is against that point. So ijma doesn't have to be the agreement of everybody, that's the first point. But what does ijma mean? So ijma in Aqeedah needs to be an agreement of all sects which are not kufri. Okay, so all Aqeedah sects which are not kufri. So at the beginning, we mentioned some of the sects, didn't we? So we mentioned there was the Asharis, there was the Ma'aturidis, there was the Mu'tazilites, the Khawarij. So it has to be an agreement of all these sects. That's what ijma is. Not every single individual within the sects, but an agreement of the sects on an issue. As long as the sect is not kufri. So for example, certain Shia sects, which are Ismaili, they would not be considered. But if they're not kufri sects, then they need to be in agreement as well. In terms of fiqh, it's an agreement of all the fiqhi madhab. And we talked about that right at the beginning, didn't we? What they were. So an ijma in fiqh has to be an agreement between them all. Right. Now, in terms of Bukhari and Muslim, based on these two things I've told you, and the fact that one is a disagreement in the asul of Aqeedah and one is the difference of the furu Aqeedah, what do we think about this issue? So some of the information you've got already, bits obviously you haven't got, but just thinking about it, what do you think?
So it's going to be what the majority of scholars say, isn't it?
Right.
About, so if the majority say that Bukhari is the most authentic book, that will be an ijma, even if there's a few people who say it's Muslim or Muwatta of Imam Malik.
But then the difference was, for example, it has to be an agreement amongst, for example, in Aqeeda, it has to be an agreement amongst all Aqeeda sects, except for the Kufri sects. So it might be, for example, us Maturidis say, this is our point. Ijma is on this issue, but there might be few Maturidis who disagree with us. But the muhtamat of the Maturidis, which means the strong opinion of the Maturidis, is this is our position. Then the strong opinion of the Ash'aris is this is our opinion. Then the strong opinion about the Mu'tazilites is this is our opinion. So all of the strong opinions have agreed and said this is our strong opinion. So even if you've got one or two scholars who disagreed, it doesn't matter. So that's what it means. So when we say agreement amongst everybody, it can't be agreement amongst all the scholars. But in terms of the Aqeeda groups, it has to be agreement of everyone. In terms of fiqh, all the four fiqhi madhab. Yeah. Alright, so.
Firstly, you have to look at whether or not Bukhari being stronger than Muslim is an usuli or furu'i matter.
Okay.
So that's the first question.
Okay, so what do you think? Okay, so what do we think? Sorry? Why?
Because the Shia have their own criteria for this, don't they?
Brilliant. Excellent. So the first thing is, Shia don't believe Bukhari is the strongest book today. So straight away it can't be an usul of Aqeeda matter, because we've got one Aqeeda sect which disagrees. So now we 100% have proven that it's not an ijma in Aqeeda. Right? So straight away that's been taken off. So now the only possibility is, can it be an ijma in fiqh? Excellent. So now let's think about the four madhabs in fiqh. We've got the Hanafi fiqh, we've got the Shafis, we've got the Malikis, and we've got the Hanbalis. Do all four agree that Bukhari is stronger than Muslim?
Yeah, I think so.
Right? Anybody disagree?
I was wondering, why do we include the Shia with the usul, but we don't include the Ja'faris, for example, with the furu'?
Sorry, no, sorry.
In the usul,
Yeah.
we talk about all the sects, right? That includes the Shia.
Right.
But then when we talk about the madhab,
Yeah.
we don't include the Ja'fari sect.
Okay, so any of the madhab in fiqh. Any of the madhab in fiqh where there's an agreement. So even actually it could be even I just made it a bit easier, but yeah. But basically it could even be, the Thawri sect, which died out. So they have to be in agreement as well. And it has to, even any of the previous madhabs, which were there before, they all have to be actually be in agreement for it to be ijma in fiqh. I just made it easier. But okay, no, but you're right. That's it. So it has to be all of them. All of be in agreement. But let's just look at these for this moment. But you're right. All madhab in fiqh need to agree on it. Even the ones which have died out. Right. So these four fiqhi madhab, what did we say? Okay, so let's go through them. So the Hanafis, obviously generally the Hanafis agree that Bukhari is stronger, and generally the Shafis agree, and generally the Hanbalis agree, but the Malikis, do they agree? So the majority of Malikis, their main position is that the Muwatta is stronger, isn't it? So it's not an ijma in fiqh either. So therefore, on the question, it's not an ijma at all. Okay? So inshallah, that was a good introduction. Hopefully we've learned a bit from it. And next, we'll be going on to the proofs of the hadiths of Sham and Yemen. But before we do, is there any questions?
So basically what you're saying is that Sahih al-Bukhari, a lot of class it as the most authentic book, but according to Ijma, it's not actually the most authentic book.
That's right, yeah. But generally, the majority say it's more authentic. But is it ijma? Because remember, to say it's gone against ijma means either person left the fold of Islam or the person's left the fold of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So we say, by the people saying that Muslims stronger, you don't fall into either one of them two categories.
So something could be majoritarily understood, but not necessarily ijma.
That's right. And ijma doesn't necessarily need to be 100% of people agreeing on it as well. So for example, now people when we've got ijma on certain issues, people are narrating one random scholar, Hafizki, and saying, he said this, so therefore now there's no ijma on the issue. But ijma doesn't need to be every single person agreeing, but similarly, as you said, majority doesn't automatically equal ijma as well.
And also, do you know the criterion for Ijma? the actual definition, that's to be agreed upon by all sects as well. And this is what ijma is.
So it was the two, wasn't it? So in Aqeeda, it has to be all the groups in Aqeeda agree except the Kufri. And in fiqh, it's all the madhabs in fiqh which agree.
So all sects agree on that definition as well?
Yeah.
And does that change as per time? For example, what might be ijma now might be not been ijma before?
That's possible. So a new ijma can be set up, but something which ijma before cannot be removed. Yeah.
Let's say you believe something in your Aqeeda, and in your Aqeeda it's okay, but in another Aqeeda it isn't, and in the end it turns out that what you believe is actually that Aqeeda leads you to kufr. Are you held accountable for that?
As long as you do tawbah, I mean, it's between you and Allah, but as long as your Aqeeda matches with the Maturidis or Ash'aris, then there's no problem. So as long as you've got Aqeeda issues in either one of the two, that's fine. I mean, about people having issues or mistakes in Aqeeda, welcome to today. That's nearly every single person. Nearly every single one of us will have one or two mistakes in our Aqeeda. And I'm not just talking about us guys, I'm talking about scholars, I'm talking about some of the famous people. Everyone's got their issues. The main thing is once you carry on learning, carry on studying, improving, and removing them things out. So I think there's nobody in this room, or nobody probably in this world right now, maybe except for a few awliya, who don't have issues in their Aqeeda. Very few people have them problems where you'll hear something and it doesn't match with the Maturidi or Ash'ari Aqeeda. So all that happens is keep on studying, keep on learning and improving, because I don't know anybody who hasn't got that problem.
So does it become further aim on the person? Further aim, isn't it, to study Aqeeda anyway?
It is,
now in today's day and age, we see it's like...
Today is definitely further to learn Aqeeda, and learn Aqeeda, not just the basics, but learn it to a very good level, because now we've got so many different issues affecting us. So now, before, if you were living in the middle of nowhere, as long as you believed in Allah, believed in the sifat you have to believe in, and believed in the, for example, sifat al-ma'am, mufassal and mujammal, that would be enough. But now, we've got so many different ideologies affecting us, we've got so many different philosophies affecting us. Now we need to remove all these, improve things, and eradicate all these, and you can only do that by studying. So for example, now, or before, a lot of our kids are getting brought up, and they're getting brought up based on the ideology of, for example, the Simpsons God. So God's this old guy who's walking around with white hair. So now automatically, without realizing it, that gets ingrained in your mind, that ideology gets ingrained in your mind. So now you need to study Aqeeda to show that God can't be in time and space, God cannot be limited, them different issues. And then just different philosophies, like you've got sophistic philosophy affecting you, you've got many different things affecting you now. So now learning Aqeeda is further and learning to a very good level as well.
Can I assume that Salafi brothers don't agree with your definition of ijma and Aqeeda or fiqh? I can't imagine them saying, okay, this isn't ijma because Shias disagree. Do you see? Like, so who accepts this? I mean, for example, in fiqh as well, would like say Salafi brothers say, okay, since Jafris disagree, then we're not going to claim ijma.
I mean, I don't know if Salafis use the same criteria, but Salafis don't have their own fiqh anyway, do they? But Hanbalis obviously have their own fiqh, so if they follow in Hanbali fiqh, that's different, isn't it? So then they've got the same criteria. And in terms of Aqeeda, same thing. So, I mean, in terms of their specific criteria, I don't know. Yeah.
There's this question that I heard a little while back, which is, I suppose it comes down to Aqeeda of what Aqeeda comes into what God can do and the attributes of God, stuff like that, right? So the question was, if God can do anything, can He make a stone so heavy that even He Himself cannot lift?
Yeah.
So it's one of those kind of paradoxical questions. God can do anything. So
Okay.
in Aqeeda, how would that be answered?
What do we think? Yeah.
I think that God will not create something which He Himself is unable to.
Yeah, but his question is not about if God will do it, it's about the possibility, isn't it? Can He do it?
It's a nonsensical question.
Right.
So it doesn't warrant an answer.
Right. But let's say you were to answer it.
Rather than denying it, how would you, as Muslims, how would you
Yeah.
answer that?
No, that's a good question.
It was in a philosophy.
It's a common question now, isn't it? It's quite, especially in a lot of philosophy lectures and a lot of philosophy books, it's very common, so we need to answer it.
If you make the claim that God can do everything and anything, then it's natural that people are going to ask you questions like that.
I agree.
Well, if God can do anything, then can He create another God? And then
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a good question. What do you think? There should be some people in the street.
Start thinking it.
Yeah.
Possible, possible, and necessary, innit?
Right.
Where does it fall into those three categories?
Right.
What attribute, innit?
That's right.
So
Yeah.
it's mustahil.
Yeah. Okay. So what you're right. So what it is there's three categories, which all the attributes of God are put into, right? So you've got the category of possible, you've got the category of impossible, and you've got the category of wajib. So wajib is anything. So God existing. So that's wajib. Now what about God creating a stone He can't lift? So is it possible or not? So Ash'aris, sorry. So Ash'aris, will they say? Sorry.
Yes.
So according to Maturidis, what we say is that first of all, in terms of creating, the attribute of creating things, that is put into the category of the possible things. So God can only create things that are possible in this world. So you can't attribute that category to the impossible, that attribute to the impossible. So what does it mean? It's a bit more complex because we normally spend about an hour doing it, teaching this bit. But what does it mean by attributing that to the possible? So it means God can only do things which are possible. So now, your question, can God create a stone which He can't lift? So what is all of that scenario possible?
No.
Which bit is not possible?
End bit.
The end bit, why not?
Because it's a defect of God.
Why?
Plus,
Not
you're
really.
limiting God
How?
by saying there's something that you can't do.
Excellent. So that's it. So within that scenario, what you said is, because of the bit, can God create a stone? Yes, He can. Can there be a stone which He can't lift? That is impossible, isn't it? Because it's impossible for God to have a stone which He can't lift. Because to be God, He should be able to do everything.
So then the answer to that would be, I'm going to obviously attack this as a
That's fine.
opposition.
But
they'll attack it as a God can't do everything then.
Sorry?
God
does everything. God can do everything. And in terms of creating, it's all attached to the possible things. So for example, so creating a stone He can't lift, that can't be done, because it means He can't lift it, so then He's not God in Himself. Because if you can't lift something, are you God?
If I can't.
Is not you God? Is He? Sorry. If God can't lift a stone, is He God? No. So then that's why it becomes impossible, because God cannot. It's impossible because God can't stop being God for just a few seconds. So innately, that scenario is impossible. So that's why we say, in terms of creating things, that's attribute to the possible things.
For God to be God, God has to do godly things. If that makes sense, right? For example, if somebody goes to sleep, can God go to sleep? Question, So if somebody does go to sleep, that means that's not God, because that's not a godly thing to do. That's a weakness. That's limiting God.
Right.
Can God die? Or can God kill Himself? Now then again, that's limiting God. And that goes against what is godly.
Exactly. No, that's the same point. So that whole sentence, you have to break it down and look at the aspect that is everything possible. So everything needs to be possible for God, and God can't stop being God for a few seconds. So in that scenario, a stone which God can't lift, that's impossible for God because He won't be God any longer. So that's the bit what stops it. So in terms of Allah's attributes, Allah's attribute is connected to the possible things.
This is basically like the question where what happens if an immovable object meets unstoppable force.
Right.
And in this case, it comes towards Allah, so in the end the witness will be Allah. So even if there was a stone created that's so heavy that no one can lift, because God has unlimited attributes, therefore it will always win. Okay.
So you're saying, God can only do godly things.
Even if the stone was so heavy that it doesn't matter because God is unlimited in His attributes. Well,
exactly.
The person that would pose this question would then say that so God can't do everything then because He cannot create a stone that He Himself can't lift. That's what that would be the point. That even if you say all this, that God is limited, in the
that's
end,
right. That's right.
God can't do everything. Then.
That's right. So God can't create a stone which He can't lift. But the reason isn't because God can't, but it's because there can't be a stone which He can't lift.
Yeah, it's
That's the
Impossible for that thing to exist.
It's like saying we never said God can do everything, as in absurdities or impossibilities. So basically it's like saying, can God become Satan? So no, he can't. So if you want to put it that way, it's like he can't do things which are impossible, because otherwise when
well,
we
I think
Christians...
that's what they want us to say. I think it's
that's fine.
A lot of us, I think, we mix up the Christian and the Islamic sort of understanding of God. Christians say God does everything, God can do everything, is all loving, all powerful, and that. And I think they mix that with us, and a lot of Muslims do that, where we start thinking that God can do everything. So then, the question posed sometimes is, can God lie in Islam? And there is some groups in Islam that say yes, God can lie, but he chooses not to. Could you, if you get time, could you address that as well?
Inshallah, yeah. So in terms of, like you said, God can do everything. It can do everything in terms of the possible things. But can he do the impossible? So in terms of the impossible things, can they be attributed to God? No, they can't.
It's like creating a circle with two sides.
Yeah.
God can't do that because you can't have a circle with two sides.
The questions are they don't make sense anyway. Because circle, if it's not, what do you call it with two sides?
Yeah.
Circle.
So it's rationally impossible things.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
It's a question that poses the question in such a way that it's impossible to answer basically.
Yeah. So is there a square circle?
The question is there to trip you up, so it's best to say, you know, Masalam to this person and walk away.
Yeah. So that's what we said.
These questions are in these questions come in under sort of philosophy.
Yeah.
And it's like the basic.
And remember, these questions are the one that tripped many people up. So, for example, the point you just made now, we'll look into talking about that in the next lecture, like the next 15 minutes. But about the possibility of Allah lying. So look, it's affected a lot of people, hasn't it? It's tripped into many people's creed. So inshallah we'll talk about in next lecture, that specific question for the first 15 minutes. But yeah, the main thing what we say is, Allah can do everything which is possible, but we cannot attribute the impossible things to Allah, because innately they're impossible. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Jazakallah khair for listening. And inshallah we'll carry this on.